Yeah, I'm really excited for the new Assassin's Creed. I'm not going to play it, but I love that show Vikings on the History Channel, so this looks kind of like that.
Hey, I'm Fingers.
Yo, this is Vector.
Hey everyone, this is Days Ahead.
And I'm Nitroid. You're listening to the Kojima Frequency. Do you think we expect too much? Do you think E3 has set expectations far too high for this kind of stuff?
Not for me. Personally, E3 has been a disappointment for the past decade, so...
Really? Even the Final Fantasy VII, the Shenmue 3, the Last Guardian, all like bang, bang, bang one?
That was a good year when they did that.
In retrospect, the Shenmue 3 thing was like, I felt like it was a bit like extortion, but that's another topic.
The Kickstarter bit, I remember audio. So true story, I was sitting about 8 rows back from the stage during that conference. And when the words Kickstarter showed up, you could hear like audible groaning everywhere.
Yeah.
Did any of y'all play that, Shenmue 3?
No.
Nope. Why would I? I did
because I
tried
love
to play Shenmue 1.
Like I played the first two and back on Dreamcast and then the second one on the Xbox when that came out. But
right.
This was it was a total Kickstarter project and it was an embarrassment to the series.
I've heard
I went into it with a positive outlook. Like this is, oh no! Like it slowly sank in and then. I don't want to spoil the story, but that was like even bigger of a letdown. We're still where we started. There's no pegs have been moved really, except for a couple little.
Yeah, I was not interested in what they did to the combat system because the first two games it was kind of like Virtua Fighter.
Yep.
And I love Virtua Fighter, and so. Like an open world type game where it was like a beat 'em up with Virtua Fighter style combat. I was all about that. And then whatever they did with 3, it wasn't up my alley at all.
So it wasn't the same at all?
It.
They didn't... I've heard a lot of fans of the first two say that the third is kind of, it's janky and dated, but it also feels like it's like a Dreamcast game with a fresh coat of paint.
Pretty much. It just didn't feel good. Like a lot of the, you could assign like shortcuts to a lot of the special moves. And the dumbest thing that they did was that your health and your stamina were like tied together in this energy mechanic. So like if you ran and sprinted anywhere, it would drain that. It would drain your health. So then if you ran and started a battle, you only had 2 dots of health. And it was just like,
that sounds infuriating.
2 separate meters? Yeah, it was awful.
On Kickstarter, I've heard that big publishers will sometimes use Kickstarters as a gauge to see how much interest there is in a product.
100%. Yeah, so that's been done.
Okay, so like, Shenmue 3 comes in and does their Kickstarter, and that's obviously not all of the money that it takes to develop it because games need far more than that. But if it does well, then the publisher's like, okay, we'll throw in.
Yeah, generally the Kickstarter will tell the potential investor, here's guaranteed half the sales. If you front the rest of the money, then, and we double these numbers, then you'll make your money back. So that's how that's done.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I feel like the way that they structured like the rewards within the Kickstarter and like them adding little things to the game because they hit a certain level, like them focusing and looking at it that way is another big factor of why it was just a failure. Because they were like, oh, we added a mini game that's you pick a color and you have a 1 in 25 chance of picking the right color. It's like, cool, man. I guess I'll exploit that later to get some easy, but it didn't need to be there. It's just like, man, these are all not very good additions.
So Nitroid, you also mentioned The Last Guardian, which was another disappointment.
Oh, y'all are on some shit,
man.
And the third game you mentioned from that E3 was FF7, which, hey, Fingers.
I finally got it. I haven't
What's the situation?
I'm on.
Okay.
I'm on chapter 10. So
you're getting there.
Yeah.
Boo.
Hurry it up.
But can we talk about?
Spoil it.
Can we talk about this for a bit? The Final Fantasy VII.
Go ahead.
I gotta make a quick.
Yeah, but you haven't finished.
I gotta make a quick defense of The Last Guardian here because it is by and large one of the best PlayStation 2 games I've ever played.
Yes.
Yeah.
That game was very janky, and the dog didn't do whatever the hell I told him to do.
Yeah, but it had so
was a
much
dog.
character. You got to give it that.
It did. It was heartwarming. Like, I found myself being like, oh, shit, oh, no, don't kill me. Okay, you're good. Like, I have, like, a whole exchange of me talking to Trico.
That game was so mired by delays and corporate meddling that it's hard to tell what it would have looked like if it had come out the way it was intended, when it was intended. But, you know, it's also kind of hard to follow up a game like Shadow of the Colossus.
Right. Truly. Yeah.
The AI was like a bug or a feature type with the dog. It was like, is he learning? Is he just being stubborn, or am I not doing the right cue?
Yeah,
around him? That was part of it. That was a little frustrating, but also just kind of like.
I was gonna say it was obfuscated enough that you weren't sure if the game was being smart or stupid.
Yeah.
But then by the end of it, you were so frustrated that you didn't care.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a problem.
I had a good time with it.
I
though,
did too.
overall. It was definitely not a perfect system.
So, FF7 Remake. I know we're gonna get to Metal Gear eventually here, but
yeah, but I'm finding myself bored a lot.
Really?
Oh, really?
Yeah, like
that was sarcastic, by the way. Yes, this game's boring in a lot of places.
Even in the slower sections in the original, I don't even know what I'm doing in a lot of the times. I'm just like, wait, what's going on? Like, what? And the side quest, the filler stuff, that's like some of the worst shit I've ever done.
My gripe was with the game. I enjoyed the game quite a bit. My biggest gripe was that I felt like they had this battle system that is so close to being absolutely stellar, but they never give it room to breathe.
Yeah, and the AI never uses regular attack and builds up their ATB, and that's bullshit.
Well, I kind of get that because they wanted to keep it a bit closer to what FF7 was, where you have to issue the primary commands to each character. So, like, on that level, I sort of understand why they did that.
Yeah, I just wish I had a gambit system of sorts to just be like, hey, be more aggressive, or hey, be more, defensive or something. But they're just kind of useless when you're not in control. Small
completely
gripes.
Useless.
And how are you going to make a motorcycle scene boring? Like, that first motorcycle thing, I was like, I don't know. It just, something about it wasn't hitting. The way that you had to accelerate to, like, catch up and stuff, it didn't feel good. I don't know. I'm still haven't beaten it. I've got some dissonance with it where I'm like, this isn't good. Back
on the original, these segments didn't exactly have stellar controls either, but they didn't outstay their welcome. They were just kind of one and done. You were hopping around so fast between different modes of play, different set pieces, that you never really had a lot of time to kind of get to know these subsystems except through repeat playthroughs, and by then you were already sort of emotionally attached to it all. So in this game, it's like every tiny little thing that was in the original is expanded out to a ridiculous degree. And so you get to experience more of it, but you also get to see all the glaring flaws at the same time.
I think you nailed a point when you said the set pieces. Like, that's something that I'm really missing in this game. That was one of the really cool things about Final Fantasy VII was how much they played with perspective and where your character started on the screen. And you had to hit start and be like, where the hell is Cloud? Oh, okay, there he is. Okay. From there, like, you just had this mix-up. Whereas when I'm playing behind the character and just, like, running in this, fixed camera system, I'm like, this all feels samey. It's weird.
It somehow also feels... This is the most ironic thing about 7 Remake. And again, I know I'm criticizing it, and I said I really liked it, and I do really like it, but somehow, despite the fact that they've expanded everything in the game outward and blown it up to ridiculous proportions, it feels smaller than the original.
It does. Yeah, that's another part of it that I'm like, man, I'm not even hitting the main beats.
and I know I'm not talking about like leaving Midgar and going out into the world map. I mean just Midgar alone in the original feels larger in scale to me than the remake.
I think it's perspective too. Yeah. It's just like each screen you're loading, that's the set pieces of like seeing that I remember that one crane scene where you're like hopping along the crane, you got to go up that one, like you could get lost on that screen if you didn't really know what to do. Do you know what I'm talking about?
It's like are you talking about when you're climbing the plate?
Yeah. and there's like all the different perspectives that you're going through. But yeah, I don't know. It's just like this engine that looks great. Like I love looking up at the plate. Like that's really cool. I like doing that. Everything's beautiful. But yeah, it's something about where it's like they've taken the important parts and expanded on some of them, but they're in different places, and it's just it feels really weird to me.
There is arguably some sort of, I don't want to get into spoilers here because you're not far enough, but let's just say that their approach to this may have a point.
Yeah, and I can kind of see where it's gonna go in that regard, but I don't know, man. Games are not hitting the same right now. It's weird.
They haven't for a while, and I don't know if that's just because we're getting older or what.
This is gonna sound, I know this contradicts a lot of what we talked about in weeks past, but I've been getting really into Resident Evil Resistance.
Nice.
I saw that.
It's janky as hell, but the build system, it's sort of like an RPG system. It has a lot of variety in terms of both the survivors, the 4 players that you play to escape. They play like over the top shooter, and the masterminds who sort of like the killers in Dead by Daylight, but with a little more agency.
Yeah.
They focus on like setting up situations and scenarios where the survivors can't make it through. And it's interesting because each mastermind has their own specific characteristic. So for instance, like Spencer, he's known for Spencer Mansion. So he's focused on a lot of traps. One of his traps is actually the red laser trap from Resident Evil 4 in the movie.
Oh, that's cool.
That's a one-hit kill. Yeah. And then like Annette, she focuses on like hoarding down people with an army of zombies, and she can summon William Birkin, which is pretty cool. But yeah, that has a lot more depth than I initially thought. And I've been, not because of the quarantine, I promise, but I've been on a real Resident Evil kick lately.
I was so disappointed after the single player that I honestly didn't even touch Resistance.
I tried to log in, and I don't know if it was my PlayStation or the servers, but it just like would not connect to that Resident Evil server. I don't know. I would have played it. And I am having fun with the Predator game, because it's pretty much that same type of asymmetrical stuff where it's 3 normal people or 4 normal people against one very dangerous thing, and you're going around putting mud on yourself to so he can't use his thermal vision on you, and you upgrade and get different guns as the fire team, and you get different weapons as the Predator as you level up on that. So
what I would like to see is a game that kind of takes these mechanics. Take it and apply it to Terminator, but make it a 3-player game. Put it in sort of a semi-open world. Have one player be the Terminator, one player be the Protector, the Kyle Reese type character, and then one player
be the other person
is like the Sarah Connor or John Connor type, needs protected. But there are other NPCs in the world, and the 3 players don't know who each other are.
Oh shit. That's a cool idea. That's kind of like didn't Assassin's Creed do something like that with the multiplayer, where they would kind of blend in with the crowd?
Yeah, Watch Dogs did
who the
too.
enemy was.
I was just thinking about Assassin's Creed's multiplayer recently and how I wish I could play it, but of course the servers are offline.
There's one game, I forget what it's titled, but the idea of the game is everybody has like a specific component of this bomb or something like that, and only certain people can find certain aspects or manipulate certain aspects or components of the device. So they can only see I could probably see only parts A, B, and C, whereas Vector can see D, E, and F. And so I'll get a command that's shut off E, but I can't see E, but I have to tell Vector, hey, you need to shut off E, and so on and so forth.
Oh, so they're kind of blind to what the bomb actually
cool.
is. I see.
Have you seen this is an older game. I think it came out maybe not that long ago. I know it was in beta for quite a while, but it's called Spy Party. Have you ever seen this?
Yeah, I think I backed that on Kickstarter.
And the premise is that there are 2 players. There's one player who is just a random character inside of a party in a room, and there's a bunch of NPCs all moving around, all doing different random things. And then there's another player who is an assassin, and he's a sniper with 1 shot.
Oh, I have seen this
game.
And
you have to watch for the player that you think is the spy in the party and shoot them and get the right person. So the player on the inside's trying to complete the objectives without getting caught by you and acting weird, and the other player's trying to pick out which one's which. And so it's
you're trying to like act like an AI.
Yeah, and it gets really psychological because a lot of the NPCs are coded to act somewhat randomly, so it can be difficult to tell.
Yeah. How could we apply this formula to Metal Gear?
You would
one
have
person
to,
in a Rex or one person in like a Gecko or something.
Well, I have always wanted to see a Metal Gear Online variant where you had somebody controlling a Metal Gear and then the other players try to take it down.
That
sounds pretty cool.
The perfect recipe for this type of game sounds like.
I was just gonna say like a sniper, do that same thing, but or like remember in like Snake versus or was it Soldiers versus Snake, where you have one character who's Snake, and then everybody else was like I don't know what I'm talking about. Forget I said anything.
I get what you mean, where one person is playing as Snake and they have their own objectives, but then you still have the two teams fighting against each other while also trying to take care of Snake.
Right. Yeah, no, I was thinking in terms of like, you do the same exact thing. You do Spy Party, but you just reskin it with Metal Gear. And the cool thing about Spy Party is that I don't think that the guy copyrighted the gameplay, because some people like Nintendo, that's something they would try and do is copyright a style of gameplay so that nobody else can do it. But you could totally, in the future, if there was another Metal Gear Online, you could absolutely have a Spy Party mode. I think that'd be awesome.
Was it Nintendo that had the patent on
sanity effects?
No, it was mini games during loading screens.
Nintendo didn't own the patent, but some guy did, and he ruined it for everybody, and I hate him.
I think that expired.
I hope he dies. It did. Days, you were going to say something, and I totally cut you off.
Nintendo has a patent.
Oh, yeah, no worries.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, Nitro did.
The thing is that... Sorry, no, I just had to complete the circle. Go ahead. I'm an asshole.
We had a crossover for Monster Hunter with Peace Walker, right? So
right.
I'm still waiting for a Metal Gear Rex and like Monster Hunter World.
I have been saying that for ages. I want so bad to see the Gear Rex in Monster Hunter.
Yeah, they could just put
cool.
the Gear Rex. Yeah, that would totally just fit right in that world. They wouldn't have to jump through too many hoops for that.
Yeah, or
Right.
finish the Gear Ray that they never put in. That would be cool.
Yeah. What do you guys think of... Did anybody look at the Last of Us leaks?
Yeah, I did.
Did anybody spoil it?
I did.
Everybody
Yeah.
did?
Yeah.
What about you, Fingers? Nobody waited?
Spoiler warning if you are avoiding that.
Are we going to get into spoilers,
I mean-
or should we just do opinions first?
I think opinions, maybe.
Yeah.
I'm not a big fan of The Last of
Well-
Us, so I wasn't really too bothered by it. But
Right.
I mean, I get why people are upset at it. It's definitely like a rug pull, but it's their
Right.
game. They can do what they want. I had more of an issue with a lot of the allegations of staff abuse.
Yeah. So, and everybody was thinking that the leaks were because of a disgruntled employee, and this was revenge for all that crunch time, and some people were even speculating that it was because the game was delayed and employees were mad about that, which I didn't understand at all. That I still don't get it. Why would you be mad that you? Oh, I guess because you have to do more crunch time.
I don't know. There's a lot of information floating around this, and it's hard to tell what's true and what's not.
Yeah,
they definitely seem to be in damage control mode where they're just like,
well,
it wasn't us that did the leak. It was an outside source.
Well, wasn't there famously a huge amount of crunch for Uncharted 4?
Yeah. I mean, any Naughty Dog game, we're just now finding out about it.
But 4 was like almost completely rewritten after it was finished or something like that. I don't know the full story, so maybe I shouldn't comment.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if most games don't go through a major rewrite halfway through development.
Resident Evil 2
and I feel like there's... Oh, yeah. No, Resident Evil 2, Resident Evil 4. There's 3 different versions of Resident Evil 4 out there.
3?
So... yeah. Literally
I knew
3.
about the hook man, the psychological one,
Yeah.
and I didn't know there was a third one. What was the third?
I don't...
Oh, wait. I remember now.
Yeah.
It was early version of Resident Evil 4 ended up becoming Devil May Cry, right?
No, that's not what I meant, but there was, from what I understand, there was the Hookman version where they had the fixed camera angles, like the classic games, and a majority of the game took place on a giant plane, which I thought was like just a great idea. Devil May Cry did start off as a Resident Evil sequel. Some people were internally at Capcom, they were saying it was going to be 4, and then it morphed into something radically different, so they had to change it. But no, like Shinji Mikami's Resident Evil 4 had 3 different versions, or 2 versions before it became the one we know it for.
Oh man!
At least I'll have to look up and see, because there was definitely a version where you fight zombies, and then it got changed to the plague infected Spaniards. So yeah,
I'm gonna have to check that out. I didn't know about that.
I mean, so Uncharted having a rewrite. And here's the reason why I was thinking about this recently, because looking at the leaks for The Last of Us 2, the story is. It's not good, and that's a lot of people I've seen are mad because that's just a bad plot line, and I feel like it sounds like the type of plot that got a major rewrite after they had already done a ton of work, and I think the reason behind that was because the story that they were telling, it didn't have enough gameplay involved, or it wasn't tied to the gameplay in a meaningful way. So they had to scrap a ton of ideas, and they had to go with something relatively cliche. It feels like a really cliche story in my eyes.
The first one wasn't exceptionally original either, but it was something that was
Not
strong in execution.
Right.
Like I said, I'm not
point.
really a big fan of The Last of Us. It just didn't click for me. But do you think that this is something where, because these scenes are being shown in isolation, out of context, out of the flow of gameplay, they're coming off worse than they would be if you were actually playing it?
I don't, personally. No, not at all.
Fair enough. Hearing they MGS2'd it, and no, they absolutely didn't.
No.
That would be if you played Snake if the tanker was 50% of the game, and then all of a sudden, you cut to Otacon, he opens the door, Raiden is beating Snake's ass.
Okay, that's a major spoiler. We are now officially in spoiler territory.
We're getting there.
Oh, whoops-a-doodle. Never mind.
I don't know if you want to have like an alarm sound. You should do like the alert sound.
Spoilers turn back.
The game suddenly becomes Tiger Woods' PGA Tour.
Yeah, it's pretty much the scene from Walking Dead with Negan.
It's more like that. Yeah. I wish it were a Tiger Woods game, press X to cave skull in, but
I saw they were like custom naming, I don't know if it was like World of Warcraft or something, but it was just like some MMO item, and it was like a golf club, and they were like naming it like
a lot of
Abby Slugger or something like that. I don't know.
The comparisons to MGS2 really kind of demonstrate how little people understood why that was there in the first place.
I definitely didn't for decades.
Because it's the comparison's always been drawn back to like Big Trouble in Little China, and how Kurt Russell's character is not the main character in that movie. Right. He's just the one you follow, and you're seeing things from the perspective of kind of an everyman. And there's a bit of that in play in the Metal Gear Solid 2. I think Big Trouble in Little China was actually cited as one of the inspirations for this, if I remember right. But the whole idea of making you play as Raiden was so that you could view Snake from a different perspective. It did not... Here's the core difference. Playing as Raiden did not diminish Snake. It elevated him.
Yeah, it made him look more like a legend.
Right.
Like, damn, he's good. Like, I'm trying to pull this off from over here. Yeah, it's definitely a different case than what we're about to dive into with The Last of Us. But I can see why people would say that. It's like, oh, on the front of the box, it's these people. I'm expecting to play as these people. Oh, they switched. I can see what people are saying. But yeah, it's definitely different takes on it and different reasons why.
Well, maybe it's not a different reason. So the reason why Abby, this new character they're introducing, kills Joel is because Joel murdered Abby's dad or mom or somebody who was working for the Fireflies, trying to work on a cure.
Yeah.
So, the point they're going for, I feel like, is to, if Raiden is meant to elevate Snake, then Abby is meant to de-elevate Joel. Because for some people, and I've been reading some comments the past week, people saying, why would I play this game if they kill off my favorite character of all time? Because for some people, I'm not the biggest Last of Us fan either, but for some people, The Last of Us is their entire world. They were introduced to video games through this game. Yeah. This is the only game they've ever played. For some people, Joel is their, their entire reason for existence.
Joel's their Solid Snake. Yeah, we get it.
Right. Yeah. And hey, Troy Baker, I'm a massive fan of Troy Baker. That guy's voice is so melty. It's ridiculous, butter. Right? And it's pure butter. And I say that as a heterosexual male, but I'm just saying, given the right opportunities, Troy Baker, just hit me up. I'm just saying. Look, point is, for some people, Joel he's like the second coming of Jesus. And so, people are saying, why would I play this game, half the game, as this person who killed the love of my life, or the video game equivalent of that. And that's understandable. But, I feel like the point that people didn't get from the ending of The Last of Us is, Joel is not a good guy. He makes a decision at the end of the game to essentially doom all of humanity. He's not something you should look up to, or, he's a very flawed man. And maybe that's the point with Abby. I don't know. I still think it's a bad idea to, if you're going to tell that story in the first game, then, I don't think the consequences of that choice that he makes at the end of that game should be what they've made this character Abby to be.
Correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't remember the end of the first game too well, but you essentially have the choice to shoot or not shoot the scientist in that room, correct?
I don't think you do have a choice. I think it's part of the story.
I remember, seeing that, you could pull the trigger on that scene. If it's the case that you can play the first game's ending and not shoot any of the scientists, then it sort of loses its effect for anybody who didn't shoot. I mean, yeah, most people did, but some people didn't.
Yeah. I think it was the type of situation like the end of MGS3 where it just hangs there and you don't have a choice. It's either you pull the trigger. You either pull the trigger or you just stand there for hours.
And same thing with Skullface. It kind of just would hang there unless you pulled it, but then eventually Kaz just grabs the shotgun and blows off Skullface's legs for you.
There's a lot of weird inversions of, not to kind of derail here, in a Metal Gear podcast, but there are some interesting inversions of imagery from Metal Gear Solid 3 and Metal Gear Solid 5, and that's one of them, where the shooting Skullface is very clearly meant to parallel and contrast with when you shot the boss in MGS3, right?
Yeah.
And they kind of take that in. It's interesting how you put it, because in MGS3 they give you that agency and you don't know you have it at first. And so when you realize you have that agency, you almost don't want it.
Right.
MGS5, they're very clear about the fact that you have that agency. And they make you try to take it, but then even if you choose not to, it happens anyway.
Yeah. But it is slightly different too. Yeah. That is one thing I did like about it. That Kaz is like, give me that shit.
Right. There's another point, and this is a little more contentious. And let me know if any of you got the same feeling from this that I did. But that awkward as hell Jeep ride?
Yeah.
Oh man.
Right. Yeah. So when I played that struck me almost as kind of a counterpoint to the ladder scene in MGS3.
Right.
Where
I was just, I knew where you were going with that.
The ladder was kind of an intermission. It was kind of taking a breath as you moved from one stage of the game onto the next.
Okay, yeah.
And it was meant to kind of be cathartic, just like, okay, relax for a minute, and then let's go again. Because it happens directly after the battle with the end, and that's, first time through, that's pretty grueling. So the game kind of gives you a reprieve. In MGS5, it's very it's that same sort of duration of nothing with music, but it's very uncomfortable and unsettling and tension building. So I just feel like there's some weird little reflections going on there.
I mean, that would be great if, like, I was the one driving the Jeep, and I don't know if Skullhead had a gun to the back of my head, and I mean, there's better ways to do it than how that was done.
Well, I mean,
maybe they were hiding a loading screen. It's just the execution on that was just piss poor.
The song just should not have been there. That was like the either the speech or the song needed to leave. Like they should have just set. But him doing that and then the song starting up, it was just like, oh, this is where they put the song. Okay,
It's
there's sort of another
I like that song.
Interesting little mirroring / inversion of things from previous games. And again, it's kind of that taking away of agency thing. Is the ending to Metal Gear Solid 5 where it's almost the complete same rug pull that MGS2 did with Raiden, except the difference is that in MGS5, Venom embraces the false identity and Raiden throws it away.
Right. Good point.
So I don't know. There's like it mirrors a lot of these things, and whether or not you can say that's like intentionally trying to make a specific point, or it's just Kojima reaching back and grabbing things from his previous games, neither here nor there.
Yeah, well, no Metal Gear game has you play as a character who kills a character that people like. So, but Metal Gear 1, Last of Us 0.
Well, I mean, retrospectively, it kind of does.
Okay, good point. Yeah, okay, you got me. You caught me dead to rights. But I mean,
yeah, it's not the same thing. It's not the same thing.
Yeah, you really need to, if you're going to do that, Last of Us, and it's too late now. It's not like they can go back and change the story, but maybe they will. Last of Us 3, Part 3, they'll retroactively be like, hey, actually, Joel's still alive. I don't know. This was just a clone. We don't know. There's a new strand of cordyceps virus that, makes functioning people that look exactly like the original. They could do a bunch of stupid shit.
Or maybe it's just a bad dream that Ellie's having.
That's the worst twist.
I know.
It's funny, though, that you mentioned Metal Gear Solid 5, because, again, it all goes back to execution, where I felt like the execution of this, from the knowledge that I know, so I could just be ignorant of the leaks, I thought it was very poor. I mean, if they had angled it in a way where, like, okay, they introduce you to Abby, you're trying to figure out where Joel and Ellie are, you see some hints here and there, and then they show, oh, Joel has been this bad guy all along to Abby. I could see that working and how it would go to the greater message of the cycle of revenge. But when you introduce Abby with such conviction that she's killing a main character who, like you said, was like their Lord and Savior since 2012, you're already setting a bad precedence. Like,
so this is an interesting point to raise, because the idea of you have a beloved story and the follow-up to that story, the first chapter is the death of the main character from the previous story, and your introduction to the new character is that they are the person who killed that previous character. If this were a creative writing class, on paper, that flies. It really does. So the question is, see, there's a lot of questions here. Is this the kind of thing that we should kind of have more of an open mind to in a game? I mean, if the contention here is, oh, I like this character and you did a thing I don't like to the character, that means it's bad, or it's going to make a lot of people who loved this character angry, therefore it's bad. Like, I guess you kind of see where I'm coming at to this.
I do. What if I added the word unceremonious? Because to counterpoint what you guys were saying about people like not wanting Joel to die, I feel like, at least from my conversations with my Last of Us friends, people were expecting Joel to be some sort of martyr. What they weren't expecting was Joel to be so unceremoniously killed and then immediately jumping to the character who killed them.
So maybe the real question isn't about whether or not it's, rather than unceremonious, I would say that the problem, you can be unceremonious with sacred cows. That is an effective tool in writing. But the problem is that so much of writing now is reliant on, and I'm going to use the magic phrase here, subverting expectations.
Oh, there it is.
Right.
Yeah. So it's become tired. You know, rewind to Metal Gear Solid 2 in 2001, and that's not really something you ever see in video games or popular media in general, at least not on the scale that it's kind of, you know, taken today. But now it's like literally everything does that.
I was going to say, and subverting expectations is sort of the greater picture of Metal Gear Solid 2's message. It complements it rather than it being sort of like a...
Right.
I almost want to say that subverting expectations has become weaponized against fandoms.
It's writ into the DNA of the franchise.
So, if I can weigh in here, I don't think that Joel's death in this game is unceremonious. It happens at exactly the midpoint, which is, you know, the major turning point in any story. You know, we say 3-act structure, but it's actually 4 acts. So Joel's death marks the beginning of the third act, and that's when the character switch happens. They released the I don't know if you guys saw the list of the levels, and they're actually named. So the first half of the game is Ellie, and then you switch to Abby. The one of the trailers, and I did a video on this trailer. I thought that the character that dies is Ellie's girlfriend Dina, but it's actually Joel. So like they show this, it's a pivotal moment in the trailer, and you hear Ellie screaming, you know, and she's like, "No, don't!" And then you hear a gunshot. The gunshot is obviously replaced by a golf club, but this is clearly a huge moment in Ellie's development. But then, you know, they do the bad thing and they switch to a character that we have no connection to. You know, this character Abby feels like she's being shoehorned in because she's retroactively related to the first game, but we don't have any of her character development. We just all of a sudden are playing as this character, and that means she has to have her own journey that also has to intersect with Ellie's. And I don't think it doesn't. The right story to tell, I felt, was, you know, Ellie needs to know or eventually learn and maybe she will, I don't know, I haven't seen this part, but I feel like Ellie should learn what the choice that Joel made. And one of the reasons why I don't feel that, I mean, Joel is definitely a bad guy, but that doesn't mean he's a bad guy. You get what I mean?
It's like Uncut Gems, you know? It's like, that guy is a bad guy, but not bad guy.
No, that guy in Uncut Gems, he is terrible. And everything that happened to him, I cheered.
Yeah.
But no, Joel, the choice that Joel makes at the end of The Last of Us, he decides to save Ellie and essentially doom the rest of humanity because he's alone. And, you know, he saw one of his daughters die, and he spent the whole game trying to prevent himself from getting attached to this other, like this surrogate for his daughter, because, you know, he's blocked himself off from emotions. But then at the end, he realizes, like, hey, you know, I deserve to, or maybe I can have a family again. And, you know, and for very selfish reasons, he decides to keep Ellie for himself, essentially, like as a pet, or as, you know, as... like I said, it's for selfish reasons.
I would say there's an alternate read to that. I would say there's an alternate read to that, and I'll just say this: when you have kids, you will literally do anything to keep them safe. Absolutely. That kind of a story does hit differently when you have children.
Oh, I mean, I'm sure. And I don't have kids, even though I've been preparing myself to have them for 30 years. That's another story. But like, he spends the entire game trying to push Ellie away, you know, trying to not get close to her because he doesn't want to go through that pain of losing a child. Yeah.
It's right. And you can see it too as him by that point, he's viewing it almost as a personal redemption arc. You know, I couldn't protect my daughter last time, but this time it'll be different.
Right. So, and that's what I mean. Like, it's a selfish thing that he does, but he still is kind of redeemed in a way. So even though he made the wrong choice, it was still it was a relatable choice. Yes, which I don't think makes him a villain.
I mean, they were going to kill
exactly.
Ellie to do the experiments, right? Like
Right.
they had to kill her to do what they were going to do. So he was kind of no.
If I recall correctly, and I hate that I know this much because I really don't pay attention to the series as much as a lot of people do, but I think there was also some document in the game that suggested that the success rate for Fireflies was incredibly low. I mean, if not impossible.
Yeah. It's a very weird direction they took it. And
with the leaks that are out there, with that video, there was no sound, correct? It was just like the video file.
There was sound.
I didn't actually see the video of Joel. I saw the video I saw. It had Abby holding the golf club, and Joel was still alive. He looks up and he looks Ellie in the eye. So I didn't actually see. I saw a screenshot of like the hollowed out section of the back of his head, but you couldn't even tell that was Joel.
Maybe the one that I had, or just the one that I saw, was muted. I thought that it didn't include the sound, but
there were a few different versions of the same scenes that were leaked. Like I saw one that was completely in a different language, for example.
I don't like all these leaks happening. I hate when people data mine shit and they tell the whole community like, hey, there's this in this game. It's like, man. They're going through so many like things to keep this a secret and then like make it a reveal, and you're just gonna be like blah and just like put it all out there. I hate.
Well,
this
without
shit.
those data miners, we never would have found out about the that nuke cutscene in MGS5.
I think with that they were planning on releasing that part. That was when the nuke, the nuke count hit 0. We were supposed to see that.
Yeah.
But when was the nuke count ever going to hit 0?
When PC players stopped fucking around.
Right. In other words, never.
Well, that was on console. Arguably, you could pull it off, but I think
we got close a couple times.
It's
Close,
kind of
but no cutscene.
I think it's a kind of a testament to how clever a mechanic that was. The fact that it was never going to get solved. That's kind of making the point.
Especially if you had adamant parties on the other side of like, no, we are not, going to get nuke free. We're going to do everything we can to keep nukes around.
Yeah, it was.
Like I remember there was that group. I forget what they called themselves, but
it was like the Metal Gear metagame chef's kiss. Like that is perfect. Of all the things MGS5 did wrong, that was something it really did right because it perfectly illustrated the difficulty of nuclear disarmament.
Neil Druckmann wishes he was Kojima.
I will give them that. Like when it does come to execution on a lot of those in the first Last of Us, that game like had me like shook up a little bit on a couple of different scenes. I was just like, whew, man, that hit hard emotionally. Of course, the daughter scene at the beginning, that one guy that just shoots himself, like all of a sudden, didn't his kid die or something? I barely remember. But I just remember that guy
infected. It was like this.
I just remember him blowing his brains out. I was like, holy shit.
The second he saw his brother, he was like, I'm done.
Yeah, I said that out. I was just like, "Holy shit, this game! Like, wow!" So it hit.
9 out of 10 times when a kid gets killed in a movie, I feel like it's just emotionally manipulative.
But I normally don't feel that. That's in the Last of Us, the way that they pulled that off. I don't know if it was just like the actual crying sounds that they did, but I was like, oh, this was this like guttural feeling of like this hurts. Like, oh no. So I think if they carry that same kind of energy to some of these scenes, like it can still make us feel weird things and go through all the emotions. But yeah,
I'm not trying to like invalidate anybody's emotions with The Last of Us, but when I did see those scenes, like, and maybe this is because I've seen so many like horror movies growing up or whatever, but I felt like it was very derivative. Like it was derivative of your classic like tragic horror apocalyptic tropes. And maybe that's just me being cynical, but I had to pull myself away from those moments emotionally because it felt like they were just taking tropes that have been effective, if not had diminishing returns in the film industry or the film writing, and they just put it in a game when nobody else has done that before.
That is exactly how I felt.
I completely agree. And we were talking about that a minute ago. Nitrate, you mentioned it. Is this something that we just forgive because it's a game, or do we demand better?
I think,
Do we need more story-based games that are less derivative of films? Like, how do we approach that question?
I do think that to a degree we should stop chasing films.
Right.
And
the short answer is the first one.
It's
the first thing you said.
the gaming industry has been trying to chase the film industry for a long time, but in a weird sort of way, the games industry has kind of shot past the film industry, at least in terms of the bottom dollar.
Oh yeah.
And yet video games don't demand the same respect that movies do. You know, no one is going to look at something like the Game Awards with anywhere near the same level of respect as they might for like Sundance or Cannes, for example. You know, it's just they're completely different types of media, and yet for some reason, despite the fact that games have really like the strongest foothold possible in the culture, they still seem to want to get that shining star of respect that films have. Like, if we could just get there, then we'll be a serious thing instead of just a toy. And we don't need to do that. Just stop. You've won. Just stop. The second you stop trying to get everybody to take you seriously and you do your own thing without a care in the world is when they're going to take you seriously.
And they're going to have fun too, like playing the game probably, where you're like trying to just, that's like one of the worst quotes. It's like, I wouldn't call this game fun.
Stop trying to make games that are going to win Oscars. It's never going to happen.
Yeah.
You know, it could happen.
It definitely feels like they're trying to like push the envelope like The Walking Dead did with Negan. It's just like they're trying to get that same like discomfort out of this particular scene. It's just like, you're going to sit through this gore fest. It's going to be great. Somebody you like, they're going to die in front of you and you're going to witness it.
I was going to it's funny that you say that they're chasing films, because I feel like in the way they're chasing him, it's almost like they're looking at it in a vacuum where all they see is Oscar bait. All they see is, what can we build to have cultural reverence like films. But the movie industry also has, they also have indie films that are, sometimes comedy, sometimes horror. They're not always Oscar bait. They have blockbusters. There are all these different experiences beyond just emotionally reverent Oscar-winning film.
Right.
And nobody seems to embrace that type of variety in video games, especially since there's a whole nother dimension that we could look into with the agency and interactivity of video games.
Movies have no fear of going just about anywhere. From the most obscene, disgusting, shocking material possible to just like short little nonsense experimental things. The range in films is insane, and there's nothing they're chasing. They're just saying, like, what can we do next, And in games, when game designers stop trying to be that, like you said, that Oscar bait, and they just kind of experiment with the medium, is when we get the coolest things ever. I have 10 times more respect for Untitled Goose Game than I have for The Last of Us.
Yeah, I think for me, a large part of that specifically is the time sink. Like, I can watch an indie film or like a more experimental film that deals with intense subject matter. At the most, I'm losing 2.5 hours. With a game, it's not just about like the actual length of the game. It also, there's a ton of investment just turning the game on, and you're having it load and going through the menu until you actually are playing the game. It's a lot more than just flipping on a movie for me. And then once you actually are playing the game, people demand to have a game of like a video game that people pay money for, that's only, even if you're only charging $10, people don't accept the fact that a game can be 2.5 hours and then you're done with it. You got to have replayability, or, it's got to be a minimum of 6 hours. And if it's less than that, then it's a waste of time. And so that's one of the things that prevents games from being more experimental is just the time investment.
Yeah, they've got the product factor. And just to clarify what I meant earlier, I'm not saying, that people shouldn't make the type of games they want to make. If somebody wants to make that Oscar bait game, do it. Great. But when literally every major AAA studio is chasing that, it just, like, we could be doing so much more with it, with the medium. Right. And for a long time now, indie gaming has been running circles around AAA in terms of creativity and innovation.
Absolutely.
Just
Without
being
a
a
doubt.
damn game.
And yet I still hear people being like, "Oh, well, what's the Citizen Kane of games gonna be?" Like, oh, just please shut up.
I wasn't able to sit through Citizen Kane. I feel like most film lists will give you The Godfather Part 2 as the greatest film of all time. So, has video games had that? I think we have.
I think there are more terrifying questions to ask, like what's going to be the Salo of video games?
Oh my God, come on. Why you got to bring that up?
They got that one game with like the dicks and the butts, and you got to put the dicks in the
Oh
butts.
yeah,
Have you seen that?
genital like
Genital jousting.
Yeah.
I was going to say more like agony, but maybe that's better.
Maybe.
Did you see Agony?
I remember Hatred, but during the whole like.
Oh
Gamer
right,
thing.
Hatred.
No, not
yeah.
hatred.
Hatred. Yeah.
That was controversial.
That was during the Tumblr days. I remember that.
And I was like, oh, somebody's making an isometric shooter. That's interesting. Oh, that sucks.
Yep.
Well, long story short, or to wrap this topic up, because I don't think it's worth talking about much longer. Last of Us has a problem in that it's trying to be Oscar bait, or it's trying to be The Walking Dead of games, or it's. I think when you have zombies in your game, you're clearly not playing with a full set of marbles. I don't know what the term is, but it's been done. It's been done to death, literally. Even if you put a new coat of paint on it and call it like,
clickers,
parasite mushrooms, cordyceps. It doesn't. You're still messing with zombies. And MGS5 had zombies, and we saw how that turned out. So, if Last of Us was more of a game and less of a movie, and I've talked about this in the past, I will watch a Last of Us movie. I'll give you $20 and you can give me all the cutscenes. You can leave the game out because I have better games to play that don't try to distract me with these half-assed Oscar wannabe cutscenes. And at the end of the day, I can watch a movie that won an Oscar. So if you're going to make a game, just do that. Jak and Daxter was perfect.
That's the takeaway from this whole conversation. Jak and Daxter was perfect.
Jak and Daxter. It was pretty damn good.
Yeah, make that.
Good balance.
Naughty
Make
Dog.
Jak and Daxter.
Thank you. Moving right along. I'm on Facebook and I found this picture of the shopping cart theory. You guys hear about this?
Mm-mm.
So the shopping cart theory apparently is a test for people who are capable of self-governing. And so if you have somebody who returns the cart to the cart return, they're like, will you do the right thing when no one's looking?
With no
right.
repercussions if you don't do it. Yeah, I've seen some of that lately.
Yeah, that's
the shopping
like,
cart is basically the new trolley meme.
Yeah,
You got to pull the switch. It's like, will you put the cart back?
Pull the lever.
Even though nothing will really happen if you don't.
Yeah, I feel like the games do that a lot of the time. Where like EA, will EA do the right thing when no one's looking? Absolutely not. They're just they're going to chase profits. Who does the right thing when no one's looking?
Devolver Digital.
Devolver Digital. I agree with that wholeheartedly. Good call.
Yeah.
They absolutely will. And the right thing is Hotline Miami. And they stopped it too. You don't need to make a third one.
Yeah. They said, you make your own third one, damn it.
Right.
They gave you a level editor. Like, hey, have fun. They literally said, they're like, yep.
Yeah.
You make it,
Or
bitch.
Katana Zero. They'll make a Katana Zero. We're not going to,
Yeah, we got DLC coming for Katana Zero as well. It's like, that's on the way. So,
man, I really want to play that game some more, but I don't think I'm going to get a chance because of all the other things that are going on, like The Last of Us. I'm looking forward. I'm really looking forward to a Ghost of Tsushima.
Ghost of Sushi.
that does look good too.
You Ghost of Tsushima? Can we go to Ghost of Tsushima? Hey, Ma!
But that's going back to
You
Katana
got Ghost of
Zero. I think that
Tsushima
game's
money.
5, maybe 6 hours. And it's like I played that game and I took my time. I didn't want to finish it because I was having such a good time, and then I just like went back and played a couple levels at a time, and then it was over, and I was like, damn, that was good. But it's 6 hours, like maybe. And then they have a hard mode with speed runs and different weapons you can unlock. So and there's DLC on the way. Perfect. Like
is
call
that
that
perfect?
a game? I don't know, but it's fine for $20. Like that
for $20. Okay,
yeah. That's an indie game. It's giving me good content, good story, awesome
I think
style
I paid
and
$8
soundtrack.
for it.
Yeah.
I paid $8 on a sale. See, okay, there's a discussion that may be worth having, like the value of software. You know, because there's this one game that came out called Brigador. It's an isometric mech game with a custom engine. They decided this indie team of like 2-3 people decided not to go with Unity. They decided to build their own engine from scratch because they felt that their gameplay demanded a custom engine, and so it wound up costing them. They spent 5 years developing the game when it only should have taken 2, and then they released it and they charged $20 for it. Everybody on Steam said this game is not worth $20. It's more like it's a $10 game, 15 max. I think this game is worth this much. And so the lead developer went on social media and he basically just complained, and he said, like, here are all the things that cost more than our game. And one of the things that he listed was a Nickelback poster. on a Nickelback poster on Amazon for like $26, and he's like, you can buy a Nickelback poster on Amazon for more than what we're asking for our game. And then he listed one of the reasons why they priced it at what they did was because they built that custom engine and they spent 5 years developing it, and that really bothered me because, like, if you base the price of games on how long they took to develop, then Duke Nukem Forever, when it came out, should have cost $800,000. Final Fantasy 15 should have been, $600. The cost of the original PS3. Like, the value of your game is not determined by how long it takes to develop, and I also don't think it should be determined by how long it takes to finish it, because a lot of people will base their purchase decisions on, I've heard people recently say like recently that like 20 hours in a game for $60 it's not worth it, which blows my mind.
Yeah, I mean, just retro cartridge games are like, unless it's RPGs,
hour and a half,
pretty much all under 10 hours. Like, if you're sitting there and just playing it,
you can play the original Mario in like 40 minutes.
Yeah.
And that game costs like $55.
You get to that third world and do the couple warps, you can beat it. But
no,
that's like speed running
warps
versus just regular playthrough. I mean,
right.
Ground Zero is just 5 minutes long.
I mean, I would rather.
No, that's not what I mean.
I would rather pay more for a good short game than less for a bad long one.
Right.
Well, that's the problem with like all this filler stuff that they're doing right now. Like, that's my problem with Final Fantasy VII right now. Is just that all these things feel like they were in there for padding to add extra length, because the story beats. Like, if I did skip all that side shit, I'd be like, oh wow, this is. But even the things that I'm doing in the filler bits, I'm like, this isn't relevant at all. This is bad.
Did you get to the part where you have to move Aerith around on those giant robot hands?
Yep.
Oh, you got to that? That made me want to rage quit right there.
There was one of them that like didn't want to go into the slot. Like I had it on the right thing, but it was like it would not fit in that little yellow thing. And I eventually got it, but it was like buggy. I know exactly what part you're talking about.
That was one of the worst minigames I've ever played. And you need minigames to break up the monotony.
Yeah, I have enjoyed the minigames. I will say that. I blew out Wedge on the dartboard. I got it in 6.
Nice.
Busted out 45 squats. Took out all those
I hate
guys.
that squat minigame. That thing can go to hell.
Dude, I like killed it. I don't know, like I just had that like rhythm in my head and was imagining picking up a drum roll faster and faster and faster, and I used to do it in high school, so it was just like, oh, I got this shit.
That's all fine.
I think we are so far removed from 1990s style game design that nobody making games nowadays, at least not in AAA circles, has any idea how to do puzzles or mini games right. They just have no comprehension of why they worked in old games. they were like flavor text, you know? They weren't big events. They were just like, okay, you're playing the game, do this thing real quick, okay, back to the game. But now everything has to have this fanfare to it. You know, I think the squats and the pull-ups are a good example of that.
Yeah, I thought that was a terrible mini game.
It's not fun. It's a distraction.
Yeah. Whereas like the Golden Saucer mini games, like when you played those all in the arcade, you're like, yeah, this is fun. I'm gonna spend some tokens in here. This is great.
Yeah, I didn't think snowboarding was fun in the original FF7, but it was a cool distraction. It was very hastily put together. You could tell. Chocobo Racing 2, same thing. It's just like, oh, here's a little distraction. You know, it's not meant to be like a huge set piece or anything like that. It's just to break the monotony of grinding mobs for 70 hours. So
yeah, like I just finished that one side quest where you have to like literally go back and forth on Wall Street like 10 times. And it was like, you know what I'm talking about? I was like, you got to help my old man. He wants to go to the Honeybee Inn and he's drunk, but you got to go here first. And I was just like, what the fuck am I doing? I was like,
the game is full of that
side mission. So
yeah, that happens like, 3 or 4 times, I think.
It feels like the Yakuza development team is like doing this. It feels weird. Like the city characters and like the way that they're all acting, it's like, this isn't how I imagine this at all. It's like goofy, like Yakuza.
Tonally, the FF7 remake, it's all over the place.
Yeah.
None of the parts I felt had any cohesion that blended into a whole. Like the costumes of Avalanche, they don't make any sense. Yeah. I don't understand why they're wearing this like medieval looking armor while Barrett's wearing military gear. He has dog tags, so maybe he was a member of the military, but it doesn't, the way the military works in this world doesn't make any sense because everything's privately owned by Shenmue, right? So and everything's holographic, so why does he have these old school looking dog tags? and then like if you look at the guards, the Shinra guards, they have this futuristic high-tech ass alien armor. Yeah. And then the members of Avalanche, they're kids. They're like a bunch of teenagers wearing costume gear from, like, I feel like the gear that Biggs, Wedge, and Jesse wear actually came from the costume department at Golden Saucer.
You know, you're touching on an issue here that I think is kind of the best way to sum up what's off about the remake, because a lot of this is kind of the consequence of taking a game that was vague visually to begin with and trying to ground it in the real world. Final Fantasy VII was a goofy game with serious moments. Final Fantasy VII Remake is a serious game with goofy moments. Good point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Days, haven't heard from you in a while. Any thoughts?
I actually haven't played as much Remake as I'd like to, but, you know, I'm still playing Therapist for my friends, so.
That was another game that got data mined early on when the demo came out, and people were pulling out a lot of early spoilers for things. Not the enormous one that Fingers is gonna find out here soon.
I think I know it. I think I already had it spoiled, but I don't want to say it. But
I mean, you can, if you're paying attention, you can kind of see it coming, especially if you're familiar with the original.
I guess I wasn't paying attention. I didn't get it until I had to have a video explain it to me. And the reason why is because like the hooded figures that float around and attack you from time to time, I thought they were related to Reunion, which I thought that made perfect sense. Like those were Reunionites.
That's what I thought too.
But no.
And it's so funny because, man, my wife, I love her, but God, she can be so annoying with how good she is at spotting this stuff. Without getting into the specifics of what those are, by about the second or third time you saw them, she was like, I bet they're this.
Damn.
And I was like, really? You think that's what it is? I guess I can see that. She's like, yep, just watch. That's what it'll be. And she was spot on.
Damn. I was like, that's amazing.
She does that all the time. It's really annoying.
Yeah, because I didn't get any of that at all. I thought like, oh, okay, this is just, they're trying to get Cloud to, go get his freaking Genova cells back to the planet or some shit.
It's okay. I get her back by pointing out voice actors that she doesn't recognize. So I'll be like, yep, President Shinra, that's Skullface.
Nice.
And we got Badger from Breaking Bad.
I didn't like him.
Telling us that he's hungry.
That's still fucking me up.
Yeah, I didn't. I mean, I liked his character, but I just. Yeah, Avalanche is just friggin' weird, man.
Avalanche is lame as fuck in this game. That's Jesse's annoying as shit. Psych. Right. Really? Like, are we doing that in this game?
Okay, if we're gonna air grievances here, I got to tell you my number one grievance for this game, and it's a dumb grievance. It is an extremely dumb grievance, but I can't get over it. I hated that you could not take the pinball machine elevator down into Avalanche headquarters in Tifa's bar.
Yeah, that pissed me off.
Oh my god. Yeah,
so
I thought
mad.
I was missing something. Now that you mention it, that's a huge problem.
I can't get over it.
I thought I missed my opportunity. Because I decided to stay at the bar during that part. I didn't. Yeah, I thought I missed my chance, but no, it's gone. But
unforgivable.
Well, okay. The things that the game does right. I think the game is beautiful. It's a great looking game, and I like the aspect of it increasing my understanding of the original. Like, I didn't know about the sun lamps. That I always wondered, like, how do they get light down here? They're growing plants. There's vegetation. How do they do that when there's literally this plate above them blocking the sun? And sun lamps. I guess I missed that part when I played the game 15 years ago. So being able to explore more of Midgar, that's always good, because I like Midgar as a setting.
I think it's just the people they have all over Midgar is the problem. It's mainly like the people and characters, not so much the setting and the set pieces. Like, they all look great. It's just I don't like how the characters are acting.
I genuinely love the battle system in this game. Yeah. I just wish you had more of an opportunity to explore with it, or explore the nuance of it. And it feels like that
was something that bothered me.
Right at the end of the game, it's starting to finally click, and you can see how everything sort of works together, and all of the various mechanics sort of interact with each other. But then the game's over at that point. Playing it again on hard, I'm definitely getting more out of it. I'm wondering, when we get part 2 of this thing, if everything we've done in this is going to carry over or not. Like, yeah,
good question.
Like, are they going to do a Mass Effect where we can just load our save file up and get all of our items and level progress?
Now, that would be ideal, to just continue save and go from there.
But there's no way that part 2's not going to be a PS5 game.
Yeah, but what choices do you make that could change it? Right. Yeah, absolutely.
There was a way that they did that with, I think, the Telltale games.
Oh, okay.
Where you had to import your save from another system, and you basically upload it to their server, and then you would be playing the game, and then you log in with the Telltale account, and then it would be like, oh, these are the choices you made. We have the record.
They did that with Destiny too, where you could move over a Guardian, or at least the achievements of the Guardian.
Oh, wow.
But then they shut down those servers, the Telltale servers, and then I tried to play that final episode and had to create a new story. So that was kind of lame.
A lot of the music.
But that's the way around it. That's how they do it, is just if you don't have a pre-save thing, then you just tell it what you would have done in those couple of choices, and then it's like, okay, we get it.
Yeah, Mass Effect did that.
Yeah. A lot of the I was going to say, a lot of the music in the remake is pretty stellar too.
Yes.
Oh yeah, music's great. Some of the remixes don't hit very hard, but some are amazing.
The Wall Market remix just grates my ears.
Yeah, Wall Market was bad. I did like the Sector 5 slums with that's the one with the bass, right?
Yeah, that was cool.
Oh yeah, I like that.
The big crescendo, right before it all cuts out, just God, that's fucking money right there.
The soundtrack, the composer for Ace Combat contributed to it, Keiki Kobayashi, and it's not 100% confirmed that this is the track he worked on, but there's a battle later on in the game against an enemy called the Valkyrie, and it has one of the best battle themes in the game, and it sounds like it was ripped straight out of Ace Combat. So I'm betting that's what it was. Just the battle music in this game is unbelievable.
Didn't like the motorcycle music. That was one where I was like,
yeah, that one
I'll
was a little
drop it
weak.
on this one.
They do a better job later on with that.
Okay, good.
It's not the only remix. It seems like almost...
I was about to say it's a second variation.
Yeah, it seems like any battle theme that gets used regularly throughout the game has variations throughout the game. So like, those who fight further, the boss theme for Final Fantasy VII has like, I swear it's got like 5 different versions in the game that you'll hear.
Yeah, I've heard a lot so far.
And the one against the Airbuster is just nuts. It's like they elevated...
My last fight that I did was the house.
Oh god, that house.
Yeah, that was tricky to figure out.
Oh man, that is a hard boss. I am not looking forward to fighting that thing on hard. When you play on hard, they disable items.
Right.
I don't think I've used an item yet, to be honest.
Oh, you will.
Okay, cool, but I am a very conservative item.
You know, I've heard a lot of
user
people
in Final
saying that they
Fantasy.
didn't use items in their playthrough, and I relied on them constantly, so maybe I just suck.
Phoenix Downs, I would like use only in situations, and then like I would get a game over, and I'd be like, I can do it. I can do it better. Like that's kind of how my mind works. I'm like, I don't need to use a fucking Phoenix Down during that fight. Let me reload and do this better. Like, because I'm fucking up. So that's
that is
how
amazing.
I play those games.
Because I had no desire to ever do anything a second time in that game. and it's weird because in the original FF7, I spent a tremendous amount of time just grinding and, doing battles to level up not only my characters, but all my materia. But, in this game, it's really difficult to get duplicates of the same materia. It can be done, but it's not easy. It's not as easy as it was in the original game, and it's not as fun. I think it's an interesting idea that you have to search for special materia and that like it's hidden in the level. Like, here's a summon over here, and you're trying to turn off these lamps.
Yeah,
it's fucking lamps.
The materia doesn't reproduce or whatever the term is when you master it either.
Right. See, that's what I was missing. I want it to reproduce.
The magnify materia is one of the most useful ones in the game, and you only get one.
Right.
Do you get more than one elemental?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can get more like fire and ice, and you can buy those freely.
I think he means
but
elemental, like the blue one.
The materia called elemental.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
I had 2.
Cool. Yeah, I've only got the one so far. And I'm like, come on.
Yeah, it's like if you have because here's the thing, right? If you have a play style that works for you or that you enjoy, and you're switching characters because they're not going to do anything on your own. Well, you're not able to really maximize your builds to your liking because you have limited materia. So, so that was another thing where it's just like when you have a tough, difficult. I wanted to say difficult. When you have a difficult boss fight and you die, I didn't want to do that again. So I used the crap out of Phoenix Downs. I would go to the shop and buy the maximum number of elixirs and Phoenix Downs. I mean, and potions that I could. But
I think I was traumatized
problem.
one time by like an RPG of like not having enough money to like buy the new weapons when you like arrived in town. So I was like, I can't be buying items. I need those new weapons and gear. And just I was just always like the kind of person that would sit around a bench and grind and get my HP and MP restored that way versus spending the money at the end. Like,
I kind of wish I could grind in this game. It's
there's not too many places to do it.
It holds your hands.
It can be done, but it's not fun.
This game and so many modern games hold your hands so tightly by logging every quest step that you have, instructing you on every single thing that you're supposed to do, and if you come to a part of the game where you're gonna, you won't be able to save or go back, it's going to warn you in advance. Like, stop putting up the guardrails all the time and just let it be what it is, because I think it would be a better experience overall if you didn't constantly have the game like tempering your expectations. Like, okay, well, if you go through this door, there's going to be a tough boss, so you might want to save and buy some items, but you can get it right back there at the vending machine. It'll be okay. Like, stop it. Just
and having the waypoints everywhere too kind of makes it just like I know you can turn them off, but
it feels like designers are afraid of the player dying almost and having to go, well, that sucked. Let me go back and do it again. Like, do they think they're going to stop playing?
I would be afraid.
And take it back
I wouldn't have played it if in that case.
It's funny that you say that because going back to me being re-engaged with Resident Evil, I actually started playing the RE1 remake, and that was such a jarring but refreshing experience. Just being like thrown into the Spencer Mansion, no waypoints. It's just you and Barry. I played the Jill campaign, by the way. There's some points. There's some points in the first 10 minutes where you could get Jill killed immediately and inevitably because you didn't know what you were doing. And like you said, I just reset, started all over again. Well, to be fair, I did know I was going to get Jill killed. What I didn't know was that it was hard to aim with the mouse and keyboard with the tank controls. So I let one of the dogs in, a little Easter egg where you open the door and the dog jumps in. I was like, cool, I want to see the dog. And I couldn't aim at the dog and he killed me.
But do they think people are going to take the game back and get a refund if they have a bad experience because they weren't prepared for something that they didn't expect? I mean, just let your game breathe a bit. We'll have more respect for it. I appreciate the first Resident Evil, and I'll remember it much more fondly than I will the RE2 remake.
Right, definitely. The original Resident Evil remake, I didn't mind going back because you're not really losing that much progress in most cases if you're playing smartly. But in FF7 remake, I felt like so many things were an unnecessary chore. Like once you're done with a battle, and if your party's HP is low, healing them all back to full health so that you can go through the rest of the dungeon it's a huge task. It takes a minute. You can't, unlike the original or most JRPGs like Persona, or you can't just go into a menu and use the heal spell over and over. You have to individually select the item or the cure spell. Yeah. And that drove me insane. So
a lot of this is quality of life stuff though. If they can just sand down some of the rough edges here, being one of them. I thought of a good analogy for what I meant earlier with the hand holding. Even if I am a pro bowler and will never need them, I still don't want the bumpers there.
Right.
That's kind of how I feel. Sorry. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I agree. The game here, it's ironic, right? Because the game does hold your hand like you're a useless puppy dog who you need everything hand fed to you, like you're incapable of doing anything on your own. And yet, despite all that, the game is specifically made for fans of the original and not newcomers. If you've never played FF7 before, avoid this game at all costs.
Yeah, it's going back when y'all talked about that time. Yeah, this is a separate game. This is a sequel or whatever, but this is no replacement for OG. Like
the original game is required viewing. You can't just go into this blind.
I feel bad for the people who bought this with the expectation, I can see what my friends were all about.
Can you imagine getting to the end and being
get to jump on the hype train.
Everybody love this. It doesn't make any sense.
Right. Welcome to Metal Gear.
Yeah.
People who started the game with 4.
I started with the Phantom Pain, so.
To be fair, though, Metal Gear didn't really have this problem until 4.
Well, and that's the thing, though, is that a lot of people's first Metal Gear game was 4 because that was the most hyped game in the series.
PS3 seller.
That's a problem. Yeah, it was. And it's weird, right? Because all of the consecutive sequels, if you do it right, they'll sell more than the previous game. So it's it's weird that in FF7 Remake they chose to completely alienate new players because...
But is that also a strategy for them to be like, well, if you want to do that, then buy the original too. And make 2 purchases. Oh, you wanted to play the original. Sorry, that's not what this is. But we have that for sale right now, actually. So if you're interested.
I think it wasn't even in consideration for them.
Yeah. Yeah, because the thing about that is that if you don't know what's going on in the remake, you have to know that you would know what's going on if you played the original.
True.
And they don't tell you hey, you're not going to get this, but if you had played the first game, it would totally make sense.
What would have been the biggest marketing difference is just capital R, lowercase e, capital M A key. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, just do that little bit of font difference instead of just all capital or, whatever.
So even more Kingdom Hearts.
Sure. But I'm saying that would have actually made that marketing distinction of like, wait, this isn't just a remake, it's something.
Yeah,
like
it's
playing with us
the
here.
title, it's a play on words. I don't even know if it's a play on words. It's a double meaning.
Yeah.
I
guess.
It's a use of the word in a way that unless English was not your first language, you wouldn't think about.
Yeah. Got it.
So now the question is, what if Konami did this with Metal Gear 1 and 2? And it was technically a separate game that maybe referenced the originals, but like you had to have knowledge of the entire series to get into the remake, or else you'd just be lost.
More Metal Gear knowledge in my head than I am comfortable admitting, and I would hate that.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't know. I think I've come to a point with Metal Gear now where the references and callbacks have folded in on themselves so many times now that I just want something detached and standalone.
I was talking to a friend recently. He's been streaming all the games. Fingers, you know him, Nourish Psych.
Yeah.
On YouTube.
Yeah, we're all buddies.
I was talking to him one night. He was streaming and he was playing Peace Walker. And we were talking about how all of the characters are, they're related or that, they're important in some way. No character just stands alone and, is for that one particular entry. And, everybody is important to something. Here's Sigint. No, it's a DARPA chief. Anyway, so we're talking about this and then a cutscene pops up and then Amanda starts talking. And I'm like, wait a second. I actually regretted that Amanda wasn't featured in a future Metal Gear game. Because there was enough opportunity for her to show up in 5, considering Chico was there. But then she was just in Camille also. But all the characters in Peace Walker, they just felt like bit characters, especially Chico. But then he comes back and he dies. And it's like, what? What's going on here?
Yeah, it seemed
weird.
Kind of strange to take this flagship game like Metal Gear Solid 5 and base its story so tightly around probably one of the most least played canon Metal Gear titles.
Yeah, a lot of it is banked in on Peace Walker for sure. Yeah, like between Snake Eater and Portable Ops and Peace Walker, that's a big window of change.
Yeah,
for Big Boss.
It's like Kingdom Hearts, where like the main series games are starting to rely on plots from like the mobile and Gaiden games.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. That's that drives me up a wall. But Fingers, you'll see.
Yeah.
You're gonna have your Kingdom Hearts moment soon.
Yeah, I'm getting there. I just find myself putting it down. Like I'm like, yeah, I've played enough for today. I'm good. Like I'm not being driven into the next. I'm just like, okay, I did enough. And I am like doing all the side quests, so that's that could be why. But I just don't have like a lot of drive to like. I'm like, yeah, I guess we'll go get Tifa. We'll rescue her, but let me go talk to this old man in a bar real quick.
Right. Yeah, definitely just going through the motions, and I'm
just not excited about any of it. It hasn't been like a cool side quest where I'm like, oh, that was fun or funny. I'm just like, oh, these are very basic fetch quests that they're not written into the plot or anything really. It's just like, hey, I need some batteries. I'm like, okay.
Again, I think that's kind of the fault of the fact that nobody seems to know how to design side quests or puzzles or anything like that anymore. You look at 7 Remake, you've got a quest screen that lists every single step you need to take for a thing, and every single one is pretty much a fetch quest. You might have to press a button while you're doing it, but essentially it's go get the thing, bring back the thing. Go find out the thing, and come back and talk about the thing. Whereas in the original, there was nothing like that. There was no linear quest structure. It was somebody might mention a thing, and then when you're somewhere else in the game, you might hear about something that reminds you of that thing, and you go do like 4 or 5 different things that might not even seem related to that first thing, but still somehow bring you back around eventually. And like, unless you're not thinking about it in a checklist format, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, like how are they going to handle unlocking Vincent? Jesus, like that.
He's going to be mandatory. These characters are going to be...
Turn the safe. Here's the combo code. Here's how to work a lockpick.
I think...
Here's how to do it.
I can't remember if I read this in an interview or if I'm just thinking they were going to do this. I want to say I read somewhere that they've said that Yuffie and Vincent are going to be mandatory in the future games.
Yeah, it sucks. Watch them do a nightmare scenario. They're unplayable like Red 13.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a spoiler for you yet, Fingers, but
I mean, I'm aware of that he's not playable. So.
Well, they've said he's going to be in the next one, right?
And that's fine if it is. I mean, you could tell even in the menu that it was only going to ever be 4 playable people. Like, there's not enough room for another person.
There is legit somebody who has been like modifying FF7 for PS4 and just they've already got Red 13 quasi playable.
Right, I've seen that.
He has like no moves, but it works.
That's great.
Good luck to those guys.
Godspeed, data miners.
What else did we have on the topic list? There was something else that...
we were going to talk about Metal Gear cut content and data mining, but we're like an hour and 41 minutes
in. We're an hour 40 right now. We can save that for another session for sure.
I've got like a laundry list of things to talk about there.
Yeah, I've been like holding off on talking about some shit. Now I'm going to bottle it up again.
Man.
What? I mean, I if you wanted to like vent for 5 minutes.
Yeah, we can keep rolling it. You know, I'm just saying we're at 1:45. It's a good place to stop this combo.
See, this is podcast remake, but part 2 is when it really opens up.
Yeah. Hey guys, welcome to Kojima Frequency. Here we go.
So the one thing that I wanted to bring up, and this is me just like mind blown, and this, for all I know, this could be completely just conjecture and bullshit. So I just realized, so you know the ice cubes in Metal Gear Solid 2, how if you shoot at them and they start melting, but then some ice cubes melt like faster when they're independent compared to ice cubes that are together.
Yeah.
So, you know, like everybody was like, oh man, I can't believe they thought about putting that detail in and stuff like that. Like Kojima's so detailed and works so hard. And, you know, he does work hard, but I looked at it from a software development perspective. And again, this is just complete conjecture, but I was wondering if maybe that was just a rudimentary implementation of the guard code, in a sense that, you know, the Glukovich soldiers, they behave differently when there's just one of them, like a lone wolf, you know, scared of snake, whereas there's a whole group of Glukovich soldiers, you know, their logic, their algorithm changes. With the ice, you know, if it's independent, it has a different behavior than the ice that is together. So maybe that was just like a rudimentary implementation of the, you know, the Glukovich guys are originally ice cubes. That's my argument.
I want to respond to that without, you know, being like I'm pandering to you. I
mean, is that like a Solidus reference though? Because like,
what do you mean?
It's like that state in between them freezing and being an ice cube and being liquid, and I don't know. I'm talking about.
No, I think people are putting way too much attention on ice cubes. You know. Well, here's the thing. Like, when you make a big game like that, when you have a big game like that and you have tons of people working on it, you're going to have people putting things in that the director has no idea about until they see it and say, hey, what do you think of this? Because there's a lot of downtime where you're expected to do work, and if you're working in the game industry, you're most likely doing it as a passion project. You know, especially if you're a software developer, you could be making money working for like Adobe or, you know, or films. You take a huge pay cut when you work on games. So there are times where you're just like trying stuff out and implementing them in the game just to see if you can get it to work. And then you'll show it to your boss and say, hey, what do you think of this? So the fact that the ice cubes, they melt at different rates depending on how close they are together, that doesn't sound like something a game director would come up with, because, like, think about it. What implications does that have on the game as a whole? People are analyzing this 10 years later, or, you know, 20 years after your game comes out. But, I mean, I honestly don't see them, when I look at those ice cubes melting, they don't actually look like they're melting. They're just getting smaller. and it's really easy to code it in a way where, like, depending on the proximity of another ice cube, it gets smaller at a longer rate. So I think we just should be careful about attributing that to, was that Kojima's? Did he like actively tell people, hey, I need you guys to get on this, like he did with the pinup posters on the lockers? Because he said, there was an interview where he said, I told my the sound team, when you knock on her breast, it should make a boing noise. And then he went to play a build later, and he's like, hey, why didn't you implement that thing that I was telling you guys about? And they thought he was joking. So that did happen, but I would really like to talk to whoever's responsible for actually implementing the ice cubes melting before I was like, oh wow, look at because you only see it in that one spot. That doesn't appear anywhere else in the game. So sounds like that was just some guy playing around with the tools.
If it were anywhere else in the map, I would agree. But that room got a ridiculous amount of attention. There was an interesting method to coming up with a lot of these ideas that they would do in KCEJ, and I'm trying to remember it as best as I can, but from what I recall, it was everybody on staff would carry around a notebook. And if they had an idea, they would just write it down in the notebook. And then I think it was once a week when they had their staff meetings, they would round table with everybody who had those notebooks and just throw ideas out and see if anybody, thought it was good, see what could come of it. And I'm fairly certain that the bomb disposal aspect of the game, where you're going around and spraying things with the freeze spray, came out of that. So it's hard telling how much of that just came from just roundtable discussion. They were spitballing a lot of ideas for Metal Gear Solid 2. At one point At one point they were talking about, can we make a controller that changes temperature so that we can have some sort of a mini game based on it?
Right. Yeah, and that type of development, I definitely think it's the best way to go, especially when you have tons of people working on a project.
Yeah. And a lot of things got cut too.
Communication's key.
I was talking to Days a bit on Twitter about this, but originally when the tanker sank, and you can see this in early trailers, there was going to be an escape sequence where, the water's rushing in and the tanker's sinking and you're running away from the water to get out. And in early phases, this was playable, but it ended up getting cut for the simple reason of, it wasn't fun. You would run.
I had to argue with someone that remembered the game as that happening, and I was like, "Dude,
wait, what?"
They remembered
what
that happening in the game, and I was sitting there and I was like, "No, man, that never happened." They're like, "Yeah, I remember, all the water coming." I was like, "I think you saw that in a trailer, but that's not in the game." And they swore that it was, and I was just like, "Okay, dude, whatever."
Fucking
it is
program
in the game, in Raiden's cutscene.
Yeah.
No, I mean, it is technically in the game, but
not like
it's
that.
not a playable sequence.
It's not playable,
but
no.
There is footage of a playable version of that segment.
Yeah, I do remember but he insisted that it was in the game still, and I was like, man.
But it wasn't fun.
I don't know where we're at.
It was essentially like almost a QTE, where you run, and if you don't run well enough, you die, and you start over. And they were like, oh, well, this is boring, let's just cut it.
Yeah,
and I think my response to you with that, it was amazing that Kojima Productions figured that out in 2000, and yet game designers are still using that trope when folks are playing. So frustrating.
Yeah, it just wasn't fun, and God, so much got shelved in older Metal Gear games too. One idea that I can't remember if this made it into any sort of build or if it was tested, if it was just on paper, but at one point an idea was that when you are playing as Raiden and you're swimming through the big shell areas that have been flooded, sharks would have worked their way in and would have been blocking off sections. And to get them to move away from sections you needed to go into, you would need to intentionally injure yourself to leave blood in the water to lure them away.
That part actually sounds cool. Like, the way to get them to do it is to injure yourself.
Yeah.
But fuck having sharks during that section on top of that already poorly made section.
Yeah. I mean,
it's like the Ninja Turtles NES game, like adding in the timer and the electric plants. It's just too much at that point. It's already difficult.
So I mean, there's a lot that went through, just different cycles of development and testing different things, and all of these games have had different stages and different aspects cut out because they just didn't, gel with the rest of the game for some reason or another.
I mean, and kudos to the companies for even showing us that shit. Like that's when Konami did show us all the stuff, from the episode 50. It was like, oh man, thanks. I appreciate y'all didn't have to show us that. Damn. But then everybody's like, why isn't it in the full game? What the fuck?
Yeah,
and
like, that started the conversations about like, oh, Metal Gear Solid 5 isn't finished. And it's that is one of the most irritating talking points I have ever encountered in this fandom. Because
agreed.
MGS5's biggest sin was bad timing. Had this game come out detached from the controversy at Konami, we wouldn't be having this conversation. It would.
I disagree to an extent. I mean, I'm not going to elaborate, but please continue.
Fair enough. Okay. There's a few things that people point to here when they talk about MGS5 being unfinished. One is the obvious one, the elephant in the room, which is the Kingdom of the Flies scenario, which has been on more than one occasion explained as DLC. It was intended as DLC from day one and was canceled. It was not part of the core game. It was not something that was going to be like the last chapter, and then they decided to not include it because of a lack of time. It was in development, and then somewhere around a year to 8 months before the game came out, they decided to scrap the DLC plans. Possibly in response to what was going to happen, but it was never intended as a part of the core game. So that's one. Two is the title card that was leaked from the game, if you've ever seen that. The Chapter 3 piece. Now, okay, I got to be careful what I say here. I have it on some authority that title card was intended to be used in a very specific way. And feel free to not believe a word of what I'm saying here.
I'm not asking so much for believability as clarification.
Okay.
So, from what the words you're saying, what I gathered is that it wasn't purposely used as a way to, like, as like a, what's the word I'm looking for? Like an increment to the story.
It
or
was
like
symbolic.
It was symbolic in a sense that it tells like a plot point. Rather than actually splitting up a story.
Right. Chapter 3 piece was not an entirely different segment of the game. You were supposed to see that. The original intent, I can't say why it wasn't used in this fashion. I have my own thoughts on why, but I can't say, I don't know why it wasn't used. But the intent originally seems to have been that it would show up once disarmament was achieved, and it would be effectively like a new chapter for humanity. It wasn't a new chapter of gameplay. It was, you've entered a new chapter in the story of the world because nukes are now gone. Enjoy peace. But now you have to work to maintain that peace. And so the war continues, even after you've done all your work.
That's the way I'd always, seen it as. It's just like,
that
hey, when we hit the nuke count to 0, we're gonna be in the peace phase, and then we did it.
Exactly.
I never saw that as like, oh man, there was 10 more missions left after that.
Yeah, no, it was never anything like that.
The thing that people will complain about, I think, that made it so weird was just those repeat missions with the extra difficulty being an extension of the main. It's like, wait, no, those maybe throw those in at the end. Once you finish the story.
Well, that
placement of like, wait, did I beat it? Wait, I guess I beat it. Shit. Well, it was that weird, unsatisfactory feeling.
That sort of leads into the third part of why people feel as though it's unfinished, and that it's the game does kind of leave you with that feeling of there are things missing, and this is when we get into that really irritating debate of, does it intentionally?
That was intentional.
Right, because that does kind of lend itself to the whole metagame aspect of this where, you feel like things are missing because it's the phantom pain and yada, yada, yada. And, it's kind of hard to put into words here, but the fact that they had certain aspects of the game that didn't work for some reason or another and decided to remove them is not evidence of a game being unfinished. So Consider for a moment this possibility, okay? That 1, Metal Gear Solid 5 is a finished game. 2, it feels unfinished, which is of debatable narrative benefit. And 3, the unfinished feeling was, to an extent, unintentional. Those 3 things are not mutually exclusive.
Yeah.
It's it's sometimes you just have to admit that something didn't land well. And I think a lot of people don't want to humor the idea that either if Kojima made exactly the game he wanted to make, then I would be 100% satisfied. Because I love the previous games and I don't want to think that maybe I just didn't like this one.
Yeah. I don't know. For me, like I felt satisfied, after playing all the tapes and after taking everything in, I was like, all right, cool. I got enough out of that one. I got enough plot points. I got enough connections and analogies to this being the analog version of nanomachines, and like, cool. That was neat.
I finished it and I enjoyed it, and I had my gripes, but it gave me a sense of closure for the franchise that I didn't get from MGS4, and I appreciated that.
Yeah, and the whole Venom Snake, being the guy that you killed at MG1. Like, that was the big reveal for me that I was like, fucking worth it. Like, because that didn't make sense. It's like, Big Boss is back around the second time. I was like, wait, no, you had an airstrike fall on your ass. Like,
in a meta sense, I really liked the sentiment of Metal Gear saying, the only way you're going to be done with this, and the only way I'm going to be done with this, if Kojima's kind of speaking through the game like he sometimes does, is if we just kind of put the gun down and stop instead of constantly going through this cycle over and over. And it's very kind of like War Games-ish, where the only winning move is not to play. That's what I got out of it, and I was like, okay, I'm done. And I turned the game off, and I haven't gone back to it in quite a while.
Yeah, I started up a second playthrough on PS4 just to kind of go through it again and be a little more lethal and have a little more fun with some of the systems and stuff. But I never felt unfinished. Cut content, sure, might have had some stuff cut, but that's, if you look at Final Fantasy 15, all the stuff that's cut from that, like that was a whole nother game, a whole nother plot, damn. But, I still enjoyed what they put out. And that's, ideas are going to get cut, things are going to get changed, studios are going to make things, stricter and not have all the ideas that you wanted, but
I got nothing to say because I'm going to burn a bunch of bridges if I open my mouth, so I'm just going to shut up.
But really, the point of argument isn't whether it's good or not, it's whether it's finished or not. And I don't think it's as debatable as people like to pretend it is. When you've got, yes, you can have Konami representatives make statements that say, of course the game is finished, and you can be like, well, of course they would say that. Like, okay, well, that's a non-starter. Thank you for your contribution to this conversation. But when you have the game's writers as well coming out and saying, yeah, this was our intent, this was what we wanted to make intentionally, this is what we felt it meant, and I've seen some people say that they think it's not finished, but that's not the case. What do you want?
Yeah, how can we prove it to you? Like, what would it take for them to say for you to believe it?
Can't.
Nothing? Okay, we're done.
Exactly.
Here.
It's either we look at the evidence we have and follow that evidence to a conclusion, or we're not really having a conversation.
Yeah, you just really don't want to believe what I'm saying to you right now.
TLDR, MGS5 wasn't unfinished. You just didn't like it.
Yep.
All right.
I agree. It was finished, and I didn't like it. Thank you.
GG.
I think that's a good place to call it, everybody.
Cool.
That's 2 hours of footage we got
here. It's been real, folks.
Yeah, we can talk more cut content and other stuff next time.
Stay tuned for Remake Part 2.